This episode is brought to you by Dog and Gun Coffee. Dog and Gun Coffee have been supporting the podcast for quite a while now, and I have been supporting Dog and Gun and supporting my caffeine addiction for quite a while because their coffee is fan-freaking-tastic. Something that I really like about Dog and Gun is that they really do kind of take on what the buyer and the user of their coffee actually has to say. So something that you, when you start buying from them, you get invited into a private Facebook group, and within that private Facebook group, they will ask for feedback. They will offer you little sales, and this week they actually released a brand new secret brew that they got some people to trial, and I was one of the lucky ones that got to jump on and purchase that one before it got out to too many. And pretty much I think that's really cool because you kind of get to see it firsthand before anyone really else does, and then give them some feedback and potentially get them to, I guess, produce the products that you actually really love and adore and want to keep buying. So with that all being said, you can actually get $10 off of your next order from Dog and Gun Coffee with the code Bowhunter. That's all in capitals, all in caps lock, Bowhunter, and that will get you $10 off of your next order at Dog and Gun Coffee.
Hey there, and welcome to Becoming a Bowhunter. I'm your host, Matty, and join me and our guests as we take the quality of meat back into our own hands, searching the wild for free-ranged animals to harvest as ethically as we can. I interview a variety of specialists from the bow hunting community to help fast-track your journey as a bow hunter. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this chinwag on one of your favorite topics in the world, bow hunting.
Team, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Becoming a Bow Hunter. This week I'm joined by my good friend Adam Barter. And Adam was probably one of the very first people to kind of take me under his wing when I first started getting into bow hunting. When I released the podcast, we actually knew that we knew each other essentially. I used to train his ex-wife, and he was like, "Dude, no way!" And so we had common ground. We got talking straight away, and then the rest you kind of get to hear throughout the podcast. And so I think I'm very grateful to Adam and everything that he has done for me. And this little podcast is a great little segment of something that he's had to, or got to enjoy recently, and is feeling very blessed for doing so, going through his Northern Territory hunt. And I think realistically, Adam is a dude that has so many stories, especially not even in the bow hunting side of things, just talking about the outdoors, and so much knowledge. He's at Army Reserves, he's kind of done Boy Scouts and whatever else throughout his whole life. I mean, he was just an outdoorsman. He was just someone that would literally go and spend the night camping out by himself when he was a kid, when he was a teenager. That was what he did for fun. He would go down to the creek and go fishing. The amount of stories he's got about different fish, different snakes, different animals that he has captured and kept and helped out throughout his days is very interesting to hear. And so he really is someone who has just so many stories and so much experience in the outdoors. And I think you guys should get a lot out of this episode. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to another episode of Becoming a Bow Hunter. Sitting here with one of my very good friends, Adam Barter. Welcome, mate.
Yeah, cheers, Matty.
Man,
That's awesome.
I'm excited for this. This is something that probably should have happened a long time ago, but on many of the hunts we've been on, I seem to always forget the podcast gear. It just never quite makes it with us. But at the same time, we seem to just always be too busy to do one anyway. So it's just one of those situations. But I guess I want to say thank you for your friendship. I love and respect you very much in the bush, but also as a friend and just what you are about as a human being. You're just a very top bloke. And I think probably a funny story to tell is just how green I was when I very first came in and we went out for a trip to Red Hill, the goat property bow hunting in northern New South Wales. And I feel like I was just the biggest city slicker, and you were just so genuinely there to help me as I fumbled my way along. And I think I twisted up a fully knotted up my mate's fishing rod. He gave me bait caster. I never used it before. And you're like, yeah, they're a bit shifty, mate. And I'm like, yeah, it'd be sweet. Fully knotted it up, and then I was lighting a fire. And you're like, bro, you just need to take a step back. Let's just try this. And you like fully help me out with that and everything. And it was just always you're very gentle in your approach. It was never I never felt like a knob for doing all the wrong things. So thank you for being a good mentor as well.
Look, bro, like meeting you's been pretty rapid and pretty awesome. And I do recall that by the river when I was tying, I'd fixed your rat's nest and I was tying on a new leader, and you're like, oh, I feel like you're my uncle right now. Trying to teach me how to tie a knot again. But no, one of my fondest memories of that moment, and I mean, you might sort of think you're a greenhorn, but you probably knew more than you thought, because it was up until that point, I'd only been on hunts with mates who were brand new and never hunted before. I had 2 army mates and 2 dudes from my club that you've met, Brett and Scotty, and they were both trad shooters. And yeah, I'd taken them on like 5-day trips and stuff like that. And then when you got that goat by the creek in your gumboots, which I called the gumboot goat, because you got your gumboots on across the river, I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, once you got that down, I was like, all right, sweet, let's get. And you're like, oh, dude, if you want to go chase after him, go for it. And I was like, oh shit, hot. I'm used to just like, all right, we're bogged down now. Let's deal with this. But you're like, oh, chase him up. So that's how I got that little one. And yeah, that was pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm all for that. Like, especially with the bow, they just don't go far. So it's just so easy for if first person takes their shot and second person follow up as much as you can. I always think that there's going to be another opportunity right around the corner there.
I think that's why they'll always hold a place in my heart, because they were one of the first game animals that I chased and had great success on. And the first I shot cats and rabbits and things in my youth. But that was like way back in sort of in the 90s basically. And then I sort of got into martial arts and all that, went down that stream before I sort of came back. Always shot archery. Yeah. From when I was a young kid. But yeah, once I got into the goats and got serious, and that's when I, had come across some money and bought my first compound, because I used to shoot bare bow compound with a Olympic anchor, because growing up in a small town, there's no internet back then or any of that crap. So, and I used to shoot 100 arrows a day in the backyard, because I was just like fully into it, like fully passionate.
How's that work with the compound bow with the Olympic style setup? So you still finger draw, you don't have a peep sight at all, and it's just you're going pretty much off point essentially.
It was instinctive, so it was just. But my point is, like, the anchor was under my jaw, like an Olympian would hold, because that's the only images you used to see of archery. Yeah, anywhere, and all my equipment was secondhand up until about 2011, and that's when I got some money, and I was like, you know what, I got this money. I'm just going to go and buy one of these brand new compounds and get a release aid and stop shooting, because I was split finger Olympic anchor. And when you're shooting hundreds of arrows, as when your nuts haven't dropped and you're not chasing girls and all that business yet, you're in the backyard and in the park behind home and stuff. Yeah, I used to shoot heaps of arrows. But I got that thing and I was like, well, this is deadly. Like, and that's when a switch went off in my head, and I was like, I need to hunt with this. Like, this is so like I can take 100% ethical shots out to 30 with this, and it was a game changer, because your form comes and goes, and my target archery was hit and miss shooting the way I was, and of course again just to give props to you, the whole thing you've started with this with your podcast and whatnot. Like, as soon as I heard it, I was like, man, where was this 20, 30 years ago? But that's just technology catching up, and
definitely
humans capitalizing on all that stuff. But excuse me, but like going down that route, and I think it forges you to be a bit more resilient and stuff. And I think that's why I went back to the trad, because it kind of feels like my roots, just shooting fingers and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny because when we first actually started meeting up, like we went and another funny story. We met up at the at the local club. It was essentially local to where you used to live, and I went out and had the biggest night beforehand, and I was meant to meet you at like 8 o'clock or something in the morning.
Right.
And I didn't set an alarm. I got home at I think I must have got home at sunrise. Like,
it was Bucks, wasn't it, or something?
It was one of my mates' 30th, and it wasn't going to be a big night, but I was completely free. The wife was gone. I don't think we had kids at that point. Maybe we did. But anyway, they weren't home. And so I just had free reign, and it was just a wild, wild night. It turned into one of those nights that things just keep unraveling. And I woke up at the time I was meant to meet you, I remember, and I rolled out of bed, and I was just like, holy shit, I don't think I should be driving. Like, it was bad. And I eventually
you're not a seasoned drinker either.
No, exactly. So I eventually got there. Not anymore. I eventually got down to you. I felt so bad because, I was meant to have you there for an hour, and I think I rocked up 3 hours late or something. But you still forgave me. We're still friends. I did something right. But when I met you, we were shooting trad. Like, you were trad from the start, from when I met you. And you talked a lot about, obviously, when you used to play with the wheels. But I think it is quite cool because you've obviously helped me set up with my trad bow a lot more as well. So I'm definitely keen to get back to it. I think I just need to find my feet a little bit with the wheels first.
Oh, yeah, man. Yep. I do remember your brace height and your dodgy string and all that stuff. But
it was all
look, like Clark said to you that time, he said, in the end, he believes that you'll go full circle and go back to where you started with your recurve and whatnot. And there's pros and cons. And, I mean, I'm pretty old school in my thinking, and I just like that challenge and making it a bit harder and, I enjoyed success with the compound, and I think it definitely, even for me, it has a lot of how do I put this, on certain creatures and game animals. I think it's almost a given that you should use one to be ethical, like like dangerous game. I think, like I said to you, that trip I just did, I sat at off the bull I took, that buff.
We'll get to it.
We were off that for like 40. Yeah.
Don't rush it. We'll get there.
Yeah, Roger.
But no, I get what you're saying, right? Like, there's different levels to what each bow can do, and that was actually one of the big kind of turning points for me. I went out to my family's block up at Springshaw, and my cousin had a Matthews. Some sort of compound bow. I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been like a monster or something like that. And I went out with my trad bow, and we came up against these pigs, and I was like, I took a shot and completely missed it, but it was like, pew, like such a small little shot, and I just felt like there's no way that that's killing something if it hit it, like especially at the pig like that. They're pretty big pigs up there. And he just punched one straight through it, like out the other side of it. I was like, wow, okay. Like, that's obviously got some power to it. And that was kind of the realization for me, like, whoa, if I really want to go about this and get, like, incredibly good fast to some extent, I guess, and be really ethical with it, then I do need to probably jump to the wheels, and maybe I'll come back to this eventually. And I think, it's starting to come back around. I think there's just so much more practice required with the recurve too.
Oh, 100%. And I've heard you prescribe that to people before. Particularly if you're time poor, like us with young families and stuff like that, like compound, you just can't fault it. You can slide it under the bed, whip it out, shoot it on odd weekends and stuff, and you'll be deadly accurate. As long as you set yourself a realistic goal of a maximum effective range, and you stick to it, and you just have that conversation with yourself before you hit the field, and you just go, right, I know I'm deadly to 30. I'm not shooting past 30. I don't care how massive that stag or that buck is. I'm just not gonna. I'm gonna hold true to my word, which is hard when the adrenaline dumps and stuff like that. But and then
missed.
and conversely, as long as you practice beyond that, but conversely, if you're just feeling confident and the shot feels right, then have at it, I guess. But everyone's walking their own path, man. But
definitely,
they're pretty wicked tools, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think actually having that conversation, if you're going out with friends as well, having that conversation before you hit the field, like, hey, what is your effective range? What are you happy to shoot out to? Let's kind of keep each other accountable to that for the weekend. I think that's a pretty good idea actually, because otherwise you get people who potentially, I don't know, maybe under pressure they might feel the other way, like, oh, my friend's here, I need to bust it up real quick, and I'll take a 50 meter shot, and I've never taken one before. Like, you don't want to see that stuff happening, right?
Yeah, on your recent hunt with was it Robbo?
Yeah.
But yeah. So did he say he just set himself to 20 and he was happy at 20?
Yeah, pretty much. And so every shot that he took, he took one in front of me at 22 meters, but everything else outside of that was within pretty much 15.
Yes. Yep. And see, that's a man that sort of set his limits and stuck to them. And honestly, like even with the wheels, like, oh, geez, I shot a nanny at like 34 once, but most of my average shots were like 15, 16, which is why I thought, well, with the recurve, that's well in your wheelhouse, you know what I mean? So
definitely, yeah. In the lead up to that last hunt, I was shooting 40 every day. Like I was just making sure I was punching. I was getting like at least 10 arrows at 40. And when a shot opportunity arose at 40 meters, it was just perfect. Like it was like clockwork. It just happened, and it was just that was how I got my fallow. And it was just like, okay, cool. That's obviously practice and true to me. So when I went out, I knew 40 meters was my effective, like very effective shooting range. I'm talking like on the Reinhardt, I was able to pretty much put it in the inner circle every single time. So I was like, okay, I'm going good.
Yeah,
for
that's
that.
wicked.
So having that sort of confidence going into a hunt is always really good.
I guess searching back in your timeline, I remember when you were like 30's my jam, you know, and obviously now that you've, you know, evolved and developed yourself, that 40 feels comfortable now. And again, you've got that much field time up now that you're fully at home reading that body language of those animals. So you know at 40, you're like, nah, it's chill, it's wind's good, like it's not going to startle or, you know, launch forward and I'm going to hit it back or any of that kind of bizzo.
Yeah, definitely. So the other thing actually that probably really helped me with my 40 with the distance is my upgrade in bow. That definitely helped.
True.
Something I was very surprised to see was how many bows you've got. How many do you have?
I can. An old bloke once said, "You never count them because then you can't say I've got too many." So I'll be honest. I couldn't hazard. I could hazard a guess, but I haven't actually counted. It was probably 12 or something. But out of that arsenal, there's my original Samick Sage, and there's there's a takedown recurve I got when I was picking fruit back in 2005. That was it. I don't know if you've heard of Hoddywell Archery, but that were one of the few archery places online back in the day, and I actually got that bow sent from Perth to the post office and then paid COD. First and last time in my life at 42 now that I've ever paid COD, but that was pretty cool. Got this bow and was chasing bunnies and stuff down there on the orchard. But I've got my original compound, which is like a pro line little thing, and hopefully the kids can inherit that and give it another life.
Yeah.
And then I've got another compound that I used for a long time. It's a Martin Cougar, and I was 19, and one of the boys is like, "Oh, this dude's selling a compound at the pub," and I'm like, "Right, how much?" And he said $100. I'm like, "All right, I'll pay for it." So that's how I got that one, and I shot that for many a year. So yeah, that would have been that would have been 99. So that's how long I put up with those bows until 2011 when I bought the brand new Bear. I got a Bear because I've always liked Bear products. They're pretty good. So that was the wheels I had for a while, and then I got what did I get after that? A Bowtech like yourself, and but they've all been handed on now to new homes. So but other than that, I've got
it's just the trad wall.
I've gone here. Yeah, I've gone the ILF. Like, I got plenty of trad bows. I don't have many long bows. I've only got the one that I took down with you on that first goat hunt together. And then I've gone ILF because, I've found a riser that I like, and it's just a stabilized wood. So it looks trad. And I shoot off the shelf. I always like off the shelf. I don't like a raised rest, but each to their own in that regard.
Do you find there's many people that do raised rest still?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I mean, if depending on where you are in the world, like if you're dealing with pretty heavy climatic conditions and rain and dew point and all that kind of
True.
stuff,
Yeah. Okay.
you want them veins, and you won't be shooting veins off a rest. But feathers have got me by. As long as you look after them and don't knock the crap out of them when you're punching through like thick scrub and lantana and that. But yeah,
there you go. So, I mean, you actually grew up down near Coffs Harbour, and pretty much were just an outdoorsman for all your life. Like even when you essentially moved away from hunting as such, you still have always had a great love for the outdoors. And even though you stepped into martial arts a lot more, you'd still go and hike and do that side of things for I guess kind of just fitness and whatever else, right?
Oh yeah, and like heavy into my meditation and all that stuff back then, and yeah, just used to like to be alone in the bush, and that's probably leading back to what I sort of alluded to earlier. It was all solo stuff. And just being alone in the bush is just, I guess, like I've said to you before, that's my church, and that's where I feel at home and I feel at peace. And I've always been an archer. I remember I was 5 years old. My neighbour gave me one of them suction dart bows,
Yeah.
and my life never looked back. I always had bows since then, and so archery's always been a part of my life. But the whole bow hunting connection, I used to get the magazines, or at least stand in the newsagent and read them, and then put them back on the shelf. Because I used to mow lawns for $4 an hour, so magazines are expensive. But I was always into the solo scene in the scrub because you can stay out there longer. You don't have to. Some mates just don't like the silence, and that's cool too. And so that was it. Yeah, and all my bow hunting originally, as I said to you, I used to go to Jackal's Hide, and his setup was what was it, $65 a day, and he'd only allow one party in inverted commas on at a time, and so I just run up there and I'd have the whole week, the whole joint to myself. So if I blew out a hill, if the wind switched or something didn't go right, then I'd just switch the valley and go elsewhere, and that was really good for cutting my teeth. And it was just brilliant because I'd come out after fire, like he might come down and have a beer by the fire of an evening or something like that, but driving out of there, I wouldn't want to turn the radio on because it just, there's that much silence inside you that you don't want to wreck it in a hurry.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much a lot of self-taught, and then every once in a while, a little dwindling of the magazines.
Yeah, pretty much. And then, for me, the big turning point in trad, like, because I've always had trad bows and I've always shot trad bows and always, with that classic Olympic anchor under the jaw. But when the Push podcast came out in 2016, and I was like, oh, this is the jam. And they're talking about this 3-unders. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll give it a shot because it's supposed to, bring the arrow up under your eye. Oh, mate, that was just the turning point for me. Mm-hmm. And that's when I went back to hunting, wanting to hunt with the trad gear. And it was it was the learning curve there was after, just seeing things go lights out with the compound. Like my first fallow buck I shot, that took 3 years to get that buck, and that was on Jackal's Hide. And that was like a 20 true flight time. It was probably like a 32 meter shot, but the compensation on the rangefinder read it as 25, and I just smoked through that thing, and it was dead in 8 seconds. Mm-hmm. Through and through with the 3-blade. And so for me with the trad bow, I was like, wow, this thing's got to prove itself to me, in ethics that I do have enough punch and I do have enough arrow mass and all that stuff. Because everything's sort of wound down to a finite limit where you've got to get it all right. Whereas the compound, you've got power for days. You know what I mean?
Definitely. But that Push podcast, for instance, it actually gave you a lot of insights, right? It kind of like transitioned your whole positioning, the whole setup, everything that you did with your trad bow in a way, didn't it? Apart from, like, obviously the three underneath, but what else did you kind of have to change around in that position?
Look, I don't feel like I changed a lot in my draw and all that kind of stuff, but it did. Like, I was instinctive all the way up until, I'm going to say might have been 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this gap thing. And it was, that was a learning curve because my brain would just switch back to instinctive, and so definitely. I'd be work the gap, and I'm like, because it takes a couple of hours to find out what your gaps are.
So let's explain gap real quick for everyone.
Oh, Roger. All right. So with a consistent draw, because it's not like you have a back wall like on your wheels, so you've got to have a consistent draw, reach that anchor point, engage your back, and your arrow length needs to be consistently hanging out the front of the bow as a reference point. So you don't reference your broadhead and you don't reference your point because, you switch them out. So you reference basically the end of the terminal end of your arrow or your insert. And, you basically just go down the range, generally 20s like in the middle of where you're going to shoot. So point your arrow or your insert at full draw on a point, fire, and then you'll generally hit somewhere close to the point. Like if you're low, then like let's say you're 4 inches low, then your point on is closer. So you would have to, at 20, you would have to hold 4 high and then you'd be hitting. So that your point on might be around 17, 18 meters. Mine's actually 20 yards, that is. And so for me, just to use an example, at 10, I'm about 10 inches low, 15, I'm 8 inches low, which is a handspan for me. Mm-hmm. So I like to just think handspan, especially in the field. You're like, oh, that's 15, that's a handspan, bang, drill it.
Yeah.
Which is, another upside to the trad bow. You can actually, when we shot those pigs that time, mm-hmm. My first arrow went over and I didn't even think the next arrow was on, and I just drilled that one that ran back around to the one you spined.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that second arrow was away without even thinking about it. So speed's probably another.
Such a good thing about the trad bow. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, man. It's a good one. So yeah, and then stretching out beyond my point on at 20, I've got 8 high at 25, and then it's actually 2.5 handspan. So it's like 16 inches at 30, which is a long shot. Yeah. So, and I mean, practicing as everyone should practice at your longest distance, and I mean, I can send them to 35 and I, sort of instinctively hold high, but yeah, in that phase, it took probably a year before it really ingrained, because I'd be holding my point ons, especially on 3D shoots and stuff like that. And I would hit right where I was aiming my point, because my instinctive brain would take over and I'd go, oh, damn, I just worked a gap and I hit right where I was pointing the arrow, sort of thing. So yeah, it took a bit of, it's one thing to train something, but untraining something, yeah, that's a whole nother level.
That's definitely a tough thing to do, especially after, what'd you say, pretty much 20 years, right, with the bow.
Exactly. And I mean, it's something they say in martial arts too, like if you've been taught to kick away or punch a certain way or a certain stance, those kind of things are really ingrained, and untraining them's pretty damn hard.
Yeah, definitely, dude.
Not impossible, but
no, exactly. You just proved that. But recently, you actually, what was the program or the course that you got? I can't remember the name.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that changed your stance a lot, didn't it?
Yeah, that's one of the few things that did change. So that was called solid archery mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
And I just used, a bit of tax coin on that because it's not cheap. It was like 200 US, and so it's about 300 Aussie.
Yeah. But
I thought, you know what? I've never had a coach. This is a coach in your living room, and they're really good people. So you support good people as well. Mm-hmm. And so bought that, and it took me, man. I only literally just finished going through it because I just took my time and digested it. Didn't want to race through. Didn't want to expose myself to anything until I'd done that first step. But I guess that's my sequential brain.
Yeah.
At action there. But yeah, the key things, it opened my stance up big time, because I used to have a majorly closed stance, so my front foot was like right across my line.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that was just a comfort thing. It just felt comfortable. But yeah, and then opening that stance up just made sense, because then you can really corkscrew your chest and extend your draw. That's probably the crucial thing. And then the other thing was just a couple of little key pointers around your claw on the string, and making that a relaxed thing, so you got to clean, because I mean what you lose with a release aid is that just crisp, clean let go. So your string doesn't twang, it just flies straight forward perfectly, and that's what you're trying to achieve with a good release. And then it's just all the everyone talks about back tension,
mm-hmm.
and it's almost it's pretty much esoteric, really, and unless you've got someone going, touching your back and going, mate, this is what you need to engage. This is what it should feel like. This is what it should look like, especially for very visual learners like myself. That was really good because it just really broke it down to brass tacks and analysed it from all angles and he references it on and on a few times just to, and that's his coaching style, just to reinforce it, even though it's in a different module.
Yeah.
But there were some key things, and it didn't completely change me, and I'm glad it didn't, because it wasn't so much work and such a big rebuild.
Yeah,
I'd like to say it was a bit of a polish, but it's definitely worth the coin. So anyone who's and I mean, it works for compounds too, and he references compounds in his teachings and stuff like that. So it's not like it's just trad specific or anything like that. But it's definitely worth it if you're remote. Like Australia's a big joint, and if you're working on a cattle station and you listen to this or whatever, like you can get online and have a coach, and you can send him videos, man. You can get someone to video you, and set your bloody phone up on a stump or whatever, and yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember the last time we went and shot at the range together, pretty much. I just noticed how wide your stance was compared to, exactly what you used to say. Like, exactly what it was before, very narrow. It was like really quite wide, and you were using your hips a lot more in regards to pointing with the hip. Yeah, it just kind of transitioned your whole body, and you also seemed to get a lot lower than you were previously, and it was working well for you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been a good change, that's for sure.
And so pretty much for the last 3 years, you've been trying to get up to Northern Territory for a hunt.
Yeah.
The old C-bomb got in the way of that and ruined a few things for you, postponed a few things for you. But you were actually fortunate enough to actually make it all happen finally. So you've pretty much just landed back down a few weeks ago. Got feet back.
Yeah, literally 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, mate, that was a long journey, and just to give you the skinny on that, that was I just thought, let's do some kind of milestone for my 40th year. And I thought, a series, because I've never been on a guided hunt per se or anything like that. So that was a whole new thing. And one of the lads I met through the Trophy Takers Bowhunting Club, I went down there with a mate, Jeff, who you've met, and that was in 2019. And they give awards for every species that year. And he got this fella, Dennis, got the award for shooting a hog deer, and he shot it with a recurve. And I'm like, well, that's rapid. That's awesome. I need to speak to that dude. So I tapped him on the shoulder in the auditorium and said, I'd love to have a chat to you later. But he speared away. He had to go back to Canberra that evening. And so he reached out through who I was sitting next to, and we just started chatting, and one thing led to another. And he's like, oh, what are your planned hunts? And like Dennis has been his dad raised him on hunting with rifles and stuff like that, and he transitioned to the bow, and now he's a trad bow shooter. And I said, mate, I would love to chase a buffalo. And he's like, well, I've got mates that are going on a buff hunt like in the next couple of months. And I was like, all right, sweet. Well, find out how it goes for them and get some feedback. And they had a great trip. So we went, right, let's drop a deposit and book this. So that was supposed to be the year 2000, and we were going to go in September. But of course, COVID was that's when it first hit. And there was serious concerns about, people from the city entering indige communities and areas like that until vaccinations and it had been unfolded enough to understand the gravity of how it was going to affect everything. And then year 2 was the guide Russ. He was a Victorian, and of course he got bloody trapped, didn't he? Like all the poor Victorians, them hunters going, cabin fever crazy. And then so this year it all came together. And I mean, there was other trials, and as I told you, I got a scan on my shoulder and found I got like a bursitis in my right shoulder and a 3x4 millimeter partial tear in a ligament. But luckily, it's not in a spot that messes with my jaw or anything like that. It's right. It's only just if I do some funky backward movement with my arm.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a life of labor and all that bizzo. But and then limbs like Dennis and I both had. So he's got a black widow, which is art versus art and function joining together in a bow, that thing. And 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 my limbs from the States, they ILF limbs, the first set delaminated, Dennis's delaminated, and then my second set were twisted, and I thought I'll get to that later, but I thought I corrected that twist by leaving it strung, which I did. I shot it for a long time, but it sort of caught me out in the end. But,
so delaminated because of the heat, or?
No. Look, I don't know. They just on the belly. They just delaminated and split. And I've only had that once before with limbs many moons ago, and so I've been pretty lucky in that regard.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk out the hunt then. So you guys actually finally get up. You get feet on the ground up there. What's the setup like? What's the camp look like? What's the setup in general for you guys, and what's the approach?
Yeah, cool. Well, that was a learning curve because I went into it completely blind, which is kind of exciting, I think. You know what I mean? Like,
definitely.
So I didn't know what to expect, whether it would be camping along the creek or whatever. But it's a working cattle station, so really, everything's just set up to accommodate people that want to, get comfortable and be happy and have a productive life there and not rough it too hard. So they got dongers and they got air conditioning and all that good gear. And I mean, I didn't run the air conditioning because it was cool enough of an evening, and you kind of want to acclimatise. As my first martial arts teacher used to say, you should condition yourself to the air, not air condition. And so yeah, I'd rather not sleep in that. And the middays were uber hot, past 40. But so yeah, it was a land in Darwin at a Sparrows. Got, I think it was 3 hours sleep in the because dirty Jetstar sent me via Melbourne, but at least I got to catch up with some cousins. So it was a 6 hours drive down, and that was good because we got to flesh everything out in the car. And as you were saying before, talk to your mates before you go on a hunt. Talk about what your expectations are, what your effective ranges are, and all that kind of stuff. So it was a good chance, and it was a single cab cruiser. So yeah, it was intimate.
Yeah, so three you guys in the front.
Yeah. That's the first thing Russ said to Dennis. He's like, "Oh, is Adam a big bloke?" And he goes, "Nah, he's like your size." And he goes, "Oh, cool, I'll bring the cruiser then because otherwise he's got a Hilux and it's not lifted, so
gotcha.
we wouldn't have been able to go half the places we did." But that was good meeting Russ and sort of fleshing out, how we operate and how he operates and my expectations were none, bro. Like honestly, I was just stoked to be going for finally. And just different country, for an environmentalist and a naturalist like me, like a conservationist, as part of my working career, it was just great to see different country and like the birds and everything in that regard. So it's just an adventure. But I was hoping to just see buffalo and maybe get a stalk or two, but yeah, it was a bit better than that.
A bit bigger and better than that, definitely.
Yeah, and I guess the upside too is while it was pretty dirty to have a 3-year wait, essentially, no one was hunting it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So all those animals have just had a bit of chill time and whatnot. So yeah,
all pretty calm. So let's really quick. We'll pause here. What was your arrow weight and what was your setup that you took up there for this hunt?
Yeah, Roger. All right. So I had black elk. They were 65-pound limbs, but that's rated on a 21-inch riser. So I was shooting a 19-inch riser ILF setup, and I had 250 spine Gidgee sticks. I had, which I bought, those 3 years ago. So I'm like, right, I'll stick with these arrows. I kind of thought about changing my setup, but I'm like, man, I got these. Let's shoot them. Let's use them. I'm not using them on anything else. But so they were like 13.1 GPI.
Because 250 spine, that's pretty dense for a recurve, isn't it?
Oh yeah, but it's like it was. If it wasn't 70, it was a touch under.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's like it's flicking them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's flicking them.
Yeah.
And but that all gets softened up because you got 103 grain Steno outsert, and then I had a 225 Cayuga old school single bevel up the front. So you're looking at 325 on the nose of it. So yeah, that's going to soften up a 250 a bit.
Definitely.
And then I just run 4-fletch, 3-inch 4-fletch feathers. Dennis is the same. He basically had he had a 70. He's Black Widow's 70 pound. He's got a lot longer draw stroke than me, so it's 70 at 31, perhaps 30, something like that. He's about 6'1", I think, and and then his arrow weight. He was shooting them ARWDs that Brett Meldrum shoots, and that he had tough heads up the front. Man, they're a mean looking broadhead, eh? He had Cayugas as well, but he had his couple of main ones were tough heads, and they were 200s. He was running 200s up the front.
So what was your total arrow weight in the end?
Oh, sorry, man. So mine was 750.
What was
and Dennis's? He had two different. So I swear he said 740 and 720.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know whether that was the differentiation there was from the broadheads or not. Perhaps it was.
Did Russ say anything to you guys about it, before you got up there, hey, make sure you've got this sort of weight or this sort of poundage or anything? There's no talk about that as such.
Negative, nah. He deals with bow hunters all the time and that, and Dennis has quite good rapport with him because he hunts some of his sambar blocks. Because Russ is actually from down south, and is a mad sambar hunter himself. And they already had rapport and whatnot. So maybe Dennis had covered off on that in my absence. I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's just interesting because obviously the biggest creatures pretty much we have here to be able to shoot. And it's just, I think realistically, I always think about my setup as it can pretty much take on anything, but I'd definitely change it if I was chasing buff. I'd definitely go a lot heavier.
How so?
I think
you run 580,
580, 585 I think it is roughly. So I'd just go heavier. I think I'd put some more weight at the front with a bigger broadhead essentially.
Yep. Yeah, a bit more FOC.
Yeah.
Dragging it through, as they say.
Yeah, big old carcass, hopefully.
Yeah. So in hindsight, I kind of wish, I just out of that confidence thing, I wish you could sort of replicate some kind of hide bone sort of
setup.
Ballistic gel. Obviously you wouldn't use ballistic gel because who knows where to get that crap. But maybe some wet phone books, soak them for a day or two, or I should have tested that just to work on that and just sort of see how that fared. But anyway, you get after it.
So let's get into the actual hunting side of things then.
Cool. Righto. Yeah, righto. So basically that was running off the back of the ute, and it's a working cattle station. So there's marked cattle all through the joint, and we'd seen buffalo on the side of the road and stuff on the way down. So anyway, we get up, have a chew, and I think first light was circa 6:30 or something like that. And when there's a swamp right near where our dongers were, and I looked across and there was a sea eagle there, and as you know, that's Simone's tribe from the PNG. That's their totem. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's a good sign. Before we even get out the grid there. So anyway, we're heading out, and we only went a couple of k's, and there's a little mob of buff, and we saw tons and tons of cows and calves through the whole 5 days. But Russ has gone, oh man, that's a good bull. Check that out, and he's like, oh, who's up first? So we hadn't even discussed that. And I was like, oh, we'll flip a coin. And I did the old, heads I win, tails you lose. Because I'm the youngest of three brothers. You ever heard that one before? Yeah. And Dennis, it sort of went over Dennis's head. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go heads. And he got tails. So he was up first. And
it's called I win.
Yeah. And so they sort of doubled back, got the wind right, punched into the scrub. It's they were probably only, 100 meters off the track, sort of in the scrub there. And in the time they were stalking up, those cows and calves actually filtered up past the car. So it was a good chance for me sitting in the car to get the bite. Most of the time they one pumped through the fence and ended up 40 away. So, I was still looking through the binos and just checking out their body language and how they walk, and just looking for when that front leg, shoulders, back and forward and all that kind of good gear as you do. And anyway, Dennis got up on his buff, and mate, they were 10 meters from it with the wind correct, and it was just they get semi-curious, and it was behind this bush, and it was trying to suss them out and sort of poking its head around both sides, and then I don't know if it got a gusty whiff, but it ran out to about, I think it was 28, and so his point on's 30. for his draw and his setup. And and Russ just runs the rangefinder for you, whatever yards or meters, whatever you're doing. And just made the call. And Dennis, came to anchor and let fly on that. And he sort of, I think subconsciously he sort of shot as if he's shooting a deer. So he hit it well, full broadside, because they stand broadside to show you their mass and to try to scare whatever sort of, all that bizzo. And I heard like a mad rustle, and then I heard another rustle, and then I saw it spit out of the bush and turn around 180 and look back at them, and I could see the flag hanging out of it. And I'm like, well, I think that's low, because they say hit sort of midship, behind the shoulder, and you'll get both lungs. And but he probably got the penetration wasn't huge either. It was probably sort of just under half peno, but those things, you get one lung and they'll just go. They'll just keep going. Like, that's so tough, eh?
Yeah.
Which you'll understand by the end of this tale. But so being the first animal and wanting to get a bow kill and all that good gear, even though Russell's carrying the guide, he's carrying the 375 Holland and Holland as backup. They sort of gave it a bit of time, thinking might have took out some heart there, or some serious blood vessels. But he just marched on and it was dropping blood but not streaming. So they followed him up at a slow pace, and they found where he'd followed the rest of them and cut across the track, a couple of k's down. And then they were like, right, well, they thought, we'll give him some time, come back to the car, jumped in the car, punched out, whipped around the backs of those paddocks, expecting him to book it for some water. And we couldn't see him. And then once that was sort of exhausted, we were like, righto, the only thing to do is follow up that trail again. Now he's had some time, and the blood petered out and they lost him, mate. So that was sort of, and always a heavy feeling in the guts, but
especially for first day, first couple of hours, like, that's pretty rough.
I know, man. I know. So anyway, Dan took a bit of a sit back and think about that one, and as we all did, and so the discussion sort of got made where it's like, well, you draw blood, you sort of bought that animal anyway, because it's it is an enterprise. You're paying for
it, though, right? Like, we did. First conversation.
No, we did know that. We did know that. Yep, that's no surprises.
Oh, by the way.
So, yeah. So of course, then I was up, and this is where things got interesting on the behavioural front. So we went down to a water source, and there was tons of buff everywhere. And Russell's trying to sort of ascertain the caliber of animal you're after, and I'm like, and having no great expectations, I'm like, I'll just be happy to shoot a buff kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
because and of course that evolves while you're on the ground. And so anyway, we stuck down into this dry water course, ephemeral water course, and we sort of punched our way down. We're poking up over the bank and looking, and there was a couple of young bulls all around too, and I'm like, they're too young. And then we saw one circa sort of 4, and he had a pretty good spread on him, and he wasn't mega mass or anything. You wouldn't expect that at 4, but he made his way into the water, so we followed him up. And once we got within striking distance of the dam wall, we were probably 100 out, we just kicked the boots off and missioned in, and he'd sort of worked his way around the end, but there was a couple of buff wallowing in there, and we got close, and we're like, ended up on hands and knees, and then we got to the point where we're like super exposed, because there's no ground shrubbery or veg like that. Like, you're not hopping bush to bush. You can go sort of tree trunk to tree trunk, because there's canopy trees everywhere, because the cattle need shade, but they basically smash all the lower scrub out. And it's
there, isn't it?
Yeah, ordinarily it would be, but it's bloody dry season, bro. So it's like everything's twigs and whatnot and grays down.
Yeah.
So a lot more vegetation along the rivers and in those sections, but up on the drier ground, not so much. So anyway, we got in and we got to probably 40 from the water, and like, we're in pretty full view of these things, and I'm like, wow, man, we're pinned, and he's like, nah, we're good, just get down. We just crawled like caterpillars. So I just had the bow across my arms, and I'm just like fully like chin in the dirt style, cruising through. And that's where I guess you want, I've just got the standard Vortex Bino harness, but that was good. Stop dirt and crud getting in your optics. And so we crawled up to a point where, like, right there, we're exposed here, but and they didn't seem too concerned. Like,
but they're looking at you, or they weren't really paying much attention at all.
They're looking in our direction and they're wallowing, but they're not like bang staring at you like a deer would.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, the plan is to there was like a hollow in the ground, and there was this like mound, just a random mound from when they'd been shaping the dam with the plant equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, let's get to that mound, all right? And so we did that. We crawled in, and he goes, all right. And that mound was basically 26 from a shooter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he called it a bullocky buck, and I guess that means that its nuts must have been smashed at some point, and it just didn't have the testosterone thick neck and like really thick beams or anything like that. But it had wicked big spread, and because he doesn't have his agates anymore, he's not punching on and smashing stuff with his horns, so they weren't broomed off or smashed up.
Yeah,
and
so
I'm like, oh, it's
skinny. Pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Not quite. You wouldn't quite say skinny, but yeah, like not skinny like a cow, but still, not
Small,
like heavy.
Rest. Yeah.
Yeah. Really long and it's still like a bit of male mass, but nothing epic.
How interesting.
But it's still a shooter, a shooter. And anyway, he's 26 out, and this is where it got interesting. And he's like, mate, just get an arrow on, sneak right up. So I got right to the lip. And then I just basically slowly, ever so slowly, brought the bow to vertical. And then I just like slowly rose up in a consistent movement. And then I was on a knee, and I practiced shooting from a knee, practiced shooting all different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. Here I am, fully exposed at 26, and they're just there wallowing, and nothing happened. And I'm like, wow. There's no shot, of course, because they're laying down. You don't shoot buff laying down.
Yeah.
And unless you're trying to put a finisher in them, of course. And yeah, I just waited, and then the wind probably got about 8-10 minutes, and the wind did a little squirrely sort of back eddy, and that bullocky buck jumped up and just went, what the hell was that? And one of the others jumped up, but one of the younger ones didn't even give a shit, just laid there. And and then it, like, the wind switched solid back in our favour pretty quickly, and then it just calmed down, and they just all went back to wallowing. And I'm like, oh man. Wow. And of course, this is day one, man, and I'm like, my nerves are like, well, and at one point, the arrow's like bouncing. And I said to Russ after, I'm like, did you see me arrow bouncing? And he goes, nah, I didn't notice. And so I just did some box breathing, and that just sort of calmed down. And anyway, the wind whipped again, and they all leapt up, and that bullocky buck stayed at 26, but was just like quartering on. Mm-hmm. So, of course, no frontal shot, no broadside shot, just no shot whatsoever. I was like, crap, that's that. And then just waiting, fingers on the string, because I'm not obviously 70-pound trad bow. I can't just hang out there and wait for an opportunity when it wheels around. Not that I'm going to shoot.
The arrow be shaking a lot more.
yeah, you bet. Get the DTs for sure.
The whole upper body might be moving.
Yeah. So just had the standoff, and then the wind switched for real, and they just sprinted through the dam, but mate, they only boogied about 300-400 meters, and
chilled.
Yeah, and on the walk out, I said to Russ, and this is what happens with the pigs as well. Like, how far can they go, mate? It's central Arnhem Land. Like, it's bloody hot, desolate, dry.
Like, source.
They can't leave the water.
Yeah.
Too hard. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but we obviously not going to chase them up, and so we just, that was it for there, and we headed in a totally new direction, and and then we're coming down the track, and there's this solitary bull, and I was like, oh wow, that looks like the real deal. And so we hit the anchors and debust and had a look, and we're like, yeah man, he's definitely worth a stalk. And so left Dennis at the vehicle, and headed off basically cut due west. We were heading sort of south, so we cut west and then just sort of made a move in and around through a bit of bush. That area had a bit more grass, but a lot of the grass was laying down flat, which makes for pretty stealthy stalking actually, in boots and socks. And so we're moving in, and it's funny, like, it's flat out there, but there are escarpment areas and just some crazy geology when it comes to just rocks punching out of the ground and whatnot. But once you get on the ground, you're like, wow, there's actually undulations here. There's places I can stealth through and, get on my guts or my knees or whatever. And there was one spot where water had cut through the landscape. So it's probably like a little, like a watercourse channel that was probably 2.5 foot deep. So we got in that and we're just hands and knees. We made it up ground pretty damn quick. And then, spit the boots off. And we got to a point where he was grazing on the other side of this bare patch, like full on, like you'd see what ants sort of develop sometimes in the scrub. And he was at 40 and he was just grazing unawares. And I'm like, oh man, this is a shot like on an animal that big, with the wheels, like that's a shot all day, every day. You know what I mean? And I'm like, nah, I'm not confident. I can't shoot 40. No, that's so in the end, probably wait. It felt like a lifetime, but it's probably 15 minutes. And I'm like, I'm going to have to get closer. So I just started every time and that's the thing. Their head is, they're a prey species, and so they've got that basic. It's not 360, but it's damn near
like
close.
180 on each side, right, with their view.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. And as opposed to our, the predators with their binocular vision, but their torso and their rib cage and that's so damn wide. When they're facing away, their head's completely blocked. Because their head's a lot not as wide as their body. And so, whenever his ass is at you, he can sort of steal some ground. So I just had to go straight at him, and I trying to use a tree, but then the trees run out. And anyway, we got to 22 yards from him.
Just from using his bum pretty much as the block.
Yeah. And I know. And then he turns, and it's good in one respect, because we're in shooting range for me. But then
big old
I was going to say, if you want to swing your head around and look for those trees, they're back a little way.
Yeah, it's pretty scary, especially when you hear some of the stories, right? You're like, oh,
exactly. Yeah. And there was many a story to be thrown around out there, mate. Don't you worry. Yeah. So anyway, he turns side on, and at 22, I'm like, sweet. And Russ has obviously got me calibrated for yards. And so I, draw back, anchor, take a sec, and then let fly. And I went low. My line was perfect, and I went low, and I was like, wow, that's crap. And then, of course, that startled him, and he swung, and then the adrenaline just proper dumped. And again, that's when instinct takes over. It's that whole
fact just became a reality all of a sudden for you. You're like, oh Jesus, he could run at any point now.
Exactly, and I was like, he could run right at us. Exactly. He could run away. He could run at us. Yeah. So I, again, instinctively just whipped another arrow on and just hit anchor, and I totally rushed it, and it was a shit release, and I shot perfectly clear wide of it. Front on.
Did you practice before you went, or?
Oh yeah, practice.
I'm kidding.
Cheeky bugger. No, and what I did, just to loop back to preparation, I also did a fair bit of. I poured through the internet and I found a wicket. If anyone's ever going,
I was going to bring this up. Definitely, this is such a cool article.
That article, that Andy Ivy. He's a cool dude. He's still on the scene. He's a slayer, and he lives in the States now, but he spent a long time over here working with Bill Baker. And if anyone hasn't read Bill Baker's book, definitely read that. He's an icon of Australian bow hunting and someone I used to read about in the mags and that back in the day. He's got a really wicked article about it's a 2-part article about buffalo and their anatomy, and he ends up hanging one up in a tree and cutting the side away and showing you, basically a raw schematic of where everything sits, and he's an advocate of the frontal shot, and so because there's no like as long as you're above that chest plate, it's all just connective tissue to go through. There's no bone to strike. So I'm like, based on that fact, like it seems like a money shot really, because
cartilage instead of anything else, right? Essentially.
Not even, I don't think.
I
think it's all just it's just all muscle, and no bone as long as you thread it down the center. And so that was what the third shot was going to be. And so I lined him up, and I shot slightly left, but not by a lot, and I hit right on his damn shoulder bone, and it just punched in, and it sounded like the arrow hitting hardwood, mate, like a piece of firewood just went And then he whipped around, and it ended up shaking out, but he only ran Well, at that point he was about 30, and that's what Russ gave me, 30, and I'm like, all right. So I knew my gap at that point, and had my head on finally, and he stopped at 50, and Russ is like, man, he's probably going to charge us. And then I'm like, oh shit, here we go. And he goes, he goes, you've wounded him, like you've bored him. We're going to have to shoot him. And I'm like, yep. And I mean, after Dennis's, I went experience, for want of a better term, his experience, the same day that, a matter of, 8 hours, 9 hours before, because this was like getting close to dark too, I should add. I was like, okay. And I said, do you mind if I shoot him? Because obviously I know my way around a rifle. And he's like, nah, sure. He paused for a second, then he gave me the rifle, and I just sent one through his chest. And I mean, that thing fires 300 grain bullets, and that hit him. He ran another 15, 20, and then just hit the deck. And so I just, bolts down, rounds shot, just handed the rifle back to Russ, and then he went to get up, and Russ jacked another round and put one into him. Yeah. And that put him down again. And then he tried to lift his head up again after that. Like he's down and he's going to die, but you don't muck around with that crap,
no, exactly.
When it comes to, ethics. And so, he said he needs another shot. And I said, do you mind if I finish him? And he said, no, that's fine. And he said, just right behind the shoulder, just, left of that ant mound. And so I just, steadied myself, and it just is all freehand shots, but of course it's not far. It's only sort of 60, 70, whatever it was. Yeah. And that shot finished him, of course. And then it was just like, well, he's down. Let's take a minute. Let's breathe in this scene, and then, we probably gave it all of a couple of minutes, and then we sort of just circled our way around real slow, real gentle, came up on the back of him, and sort of tapped him on the bum, and then came around and tapped him on the midsection, then tapped him on the eye, and he was out. And and that, I mean, this is probably one of the cooler things that occurred in the hunt was like Russell's, like he's a rough diamond, and he's a cattleman, and he's you don't know a man until you get to know him, and he's university educated. He's well read, like the amount of books that dude's read, and we shared stories on books we'd read and things like that. Massive respect for the animals as a guide. So he's like, look, mate, I'll go back, get our boots. I'll GPS my way out, a route out, and I'll bring the vehicle back. I'll just give you some time with your animal, I'm like, oh, that was awesome. So I just had a lot of peaceful time there with my bull, and he made his way back in the vehicle, and then we took some photos, and in the light was going down, and he said to me, look, it's not the perfect light for photos, and he said, you got two options. You can take photos with what you got now, and then we'll crack on. And he said, or we can leave him for the morning and get some photos in the light time. And I said, well, mate, I really want some meat off him. And he go, and the station owner said, get me the legs for sausages. So because of course I can't fly back with 300 kilos. Yeah, that's never going to fly. And I haven't driven. Yeah, I haven't driven there. Oh, it was expensive. I did have to up my $90 extra for my baggage coming home.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, legit. So we took the legs, and I got the back straps, and we took his head, and after the photos, and it was a pretty mint way to end day one.
That's crazy. Considering that's just day one, that's insane.
I know.
Do you know?
I was stoked.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, do you know what sort of percentage of the deal happens with Russ in regards to him having to finish shots like that?
I don't know. I didn't ask that.
That would be a pretty interesting stat to find out, I think, because I remember watching one of the videos that Brett Meldrum put up, and he put 5 arrows through one of the buffaloes before it went down in the end. And you're talking about one arrow. Yeah, sure, it wasn't like the best shot, wasn't a vital shot at all, but then 3 extra 300 grain bullets on top of that. Like, that's just ridiculous for that just to keep going.
I know that bovine mass and that muscle mass, and it's hectic what they can soak up. And I mean, once their adrenaline kicks in, they're a different animal altogether.
Exactly, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I guess as long as that first arrow takes it clean, and again, as everyone says, you've got to get both lungs.
Yeah.
And once that's what takes the snot out of them. It's kind of like, the 6'4" dude. If you can stop him breathing with a punch to the throat, you know what I mean? Like the fight it's not going to continue. You know what I mean? So they might have a lot of mass to throw around, but if they can't suck in the air, that sort of ends them and anchors them. But that's interesting, and I wouldn't know what that stat is, but I'd be curious to know for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think obviously we're all going up there and trying, like all bow hunters, I think would be going up there with the same goal to knock them over as quick and as efficiently as possible, right? But yeah, it just doesn't necessarily always happen that way. Pretty crazy. So day one, how long are you guys actually up there for? You had 5 more days?
5 days? 5 days. Yeah,
total,
yeah. So, yep. Obviously, Dennis is up for day 2.
So he's down the money already for the first one, but he's still keen to go for another?
Yeah, well, look, they was doing a bit of mustering, and they got, I can't remember the denomination of helicopter they got, but it's one of them puny little things, little 2-seater jobs.
Yeah.
And so they, I mean, it's expensive to fly those things, but they said, yeah, look, we'll do a quick buzz over the water in that region and see if we can find him. And I mean, if they find him in the next 6, 12, whatever months, honestly, I think he's going to be fine. The way he wasn't bleeding. And I mean, the way they smash each other and stab each other and stuff like that, like, yeah, I think he'd be solid, honestly. And he's, Grego, another mate I've met through Trophy Takers, I phoned him after the trip, and I was just told him how it all went down, and he's like, oh man, he said, they cull them for meat all the time, and he said that they have to put them through like a airport scanner, and he said they find bullets and broadheads in them all the time. He said they're forever finding it, and he said a lot of the times it's the Indige communities, and they have like small caliber weapons. So, and I mean they run through their town and stuff like that. So they just shoot at them and to scare them off and whatnot a lot of the time, and and they end up getting mustard and going through the abbeys, and they find all manner of projectiles in them.
It's so insane.
I know, it's crazy.
And I wonder, it probably doesn't really affect them that much, but Jesus, you're like, they cop a fair bit, the poor old buff.
It's rough, yeah. And I mean, just to loop back on mine, he had a limp. His rear left had quite a limp to it, and I mean, he just oozed age, like he was an old warrior, like a battler, and it, like I really don't know whether I'd hunt another one, after taking a guy like him. He's a special animal to me, and would be to anyone in my shoes for sure. But once we got him down, you could see he had it was kind of like a massive indentation where the tip of the horn from another buff had actually like pushed in so far that it had left an indent. Wow. So and I mean, imagine the blunt force trauma from that headbutt when it smashed him. You know what I mean? And he didn't look nimble anyway. So he probably would have got flogged, I would think, by one of them younger ones. So yeah, he'd had his day, that's for sure. Yeah, he would have sowed his oats for sure. But so cracking on into Tuesday, day 2, Dennis is up, and we got through a fair bit and found a good representative bull, and Dennis was keen on him, so Dennis got in on him, and God, I'm scratching my head now to sort of remember how that one went down. But anyway, he took him, and he ended up taking a bullet too. Because once they start to run, it's like, well, if you're not 100% sure you've got double lung, we're gonna have to track him, and there's always that chance that you won't catch up to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he may expire somewhere, but they've got stamina to go, like even with that one lung. So after that experience, and I mean, putting hands on hearts, I'm like the stalk's done. It's a hunt to that point. You know what I mean? Like it's like I've got no bugbears about the efficacy of finishing it with a bullet. That was no dramas for me, and obviously no dramas for Dennis. So he took a good representative bull on Tuesday, but his Wednesday one, Like, so after that, he's like, righto, that's enough buff. I'm going to concentrate on a scrubber. So that was the next thing in line for us personally. And so we're heading up the bush, up this mad track, and here's this thing on the road. And in Dennis's words, he's like, oh, it looked like a black V-dub on the road. And it was that, it's what you say is the quintessential territory buff. This thing was just huge. Yeah, wow. And it's staring at us. I'm like, holy effing hell, man, that's whoa. And I just looked at him. I'm like, he gonna have a crack? And he goes, he just looks at me and he goes like that 5-second pause. And he goes, yup. So, all right, Russ is like, righto, let's do it. Let's not muck around. So they debust like right there and just like sort of sat doggo. And then I jumped in the rig and just like rolled down sort of. So because he's on the track, like he's seen us. Yeah, so I just sort of did the U-bolt and sort of reversed all the way down the track until I disappeared and went right around the corner and just hung flex down there. And anyway, Dennis, they got in on him, and he just was a boss, mate. He pretty much mustn't have been scared of nothing. And like I said, it's been 3 years since they've been hunted. Yeah. So he just, he
run for anything.
No, and they got in on him to sub 30, and then he must have whiffed him and just went, what's that? Get out of my space. And then he just started marching in on him. So Dennis is like, oh, shit, here we go. And he took a 17-metre frontal shot and ended up getting it right down the neck. So it wasn't like full centre. It was sort of like down the neck, but he got full penetration with like I said, he's a 30-inch draw. So that thing's like rocking 31 and a half. Yeah. Circa that. So that's a ton of penetration down inside that animal. But again, it's frontal. So if you're not central and you're not getting all the crucial vessels around the pump there, around the heart, you can't be 100% certified that he's going to die in 100 metres, 200 metres. So, the follow-up with the rifle was used there again. And I think he took 2 rounds. He took 2 rounds, and I think the Tuesday buff took 2 rounds. That's right. Yeah, man. But he's just a weapon, an absolute weapon. He didn't have the spread of mine, but he's got way more mass, like at the bases and that. Like he's just an absolute unit. So Tuesday we got I got the back straps from that one, and we dragged that animal to make a pig bait, and like right by a really good river spot. And then the Wednesday one, it was pretty remote. It's on like quite some quite elevated ground, still probably a couple of 100 meters from the river, but it was the middle of the day, man. And like I said, above 40 and above in the sun, from sort of circa 10:30 to about 1:30 kind of thing. Yeah. And by the time we took some pickies at him and tried to get his back straps, they were spoiled. You could see, yeah, man, it had turned like, instead of your red raw meat, it had turned pink for about 1/4 inch down. So that was a real shame because he was carrying some weight.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it
makes
was.
Sense, but it's like, you just wouldn't expect it to happen so fast because
I
think their protective layer would do something for them.
Yeah, you would think. But he was in the full sun, and so it was. I mean, his body temp's probably obviously pretty high in that environment too, and he might have been due to go to water too, perhaps. But I mean, the question mark on that experience was like, how do they do it in Africa? Like, if it's epic hot like that, how do they not spoil the meat? Unless they just boil it all.
I was going to say maybe they just don't care.
Yeah, perhaps.
Guts of steel, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Because I'm like, man, you're still just going to hang it in the shade of a tree. There's no refrigeration, on the ground level of, that sort of developing areas. But anyway, so he was cool, and that sort of was a big day there, and sort of scattering through there, we'd seen other game around at donkeys, which the ABA lads are mad for. Yeah, because that's part of it's a scoreable trophy if you're going for all the species and whatnot. And then dogs, we saw a couple of dogs kicking around, and even when we were chasing the buff for those first 2 days, we saw the odd scrub bull, so I was sort of getting an idea of what the scrubbers look like, and so yeah, that was cool. And that Dennis is like, right, well, I'm tagged out. and I'm like, yeah, fair enough.
Yep, that would
do. And yeah, and it was on I think it was on Wednesday. I was just like doing some practice with my bow, and that's when I realized my limbs were twisted. So it wasn't a major twist when I got them in the mail, and I mean they come from America, and I'm like, maybe they were in a hot thing or hot vehicle at some point. So the Black Widow has a good instructional on how to correct limbs. So the first way is just leave it strung. Another way is to try and twist it, but being heavy poundage limbs and quite thick, that like this, and no amount of twisting is really going to give it enough to take it past the point to correct it. And another way is with a heat, like with the blow dryer or whatever, like a hair dryer, and the other one's hot water. So you just run it under hot water and do that. But I'm like, that sounds excessive.
Yeah,
and with a hunt looming and that, I didn't want to do anything too radical. Because I did try to order backup limbs just because I'm like, for the sake of 300 Aussie bucks through Lancaster Archery, I'm like, man, I'm just getting another set. Screw it.
Yeah.
No, I'd rather that. And so, but 2 weeks before the hunt, I said, I emailed them and I said, hey, are they coming anytime soon? They said, nah, mate, they're still on back order. And I said, just reimburse me then. It's pointless. But yeah, they were twisted. So Dennis is like,
had pretty much prepared for it and then got stuffed over anyway.
Yeah, I got stooged. And so Dennis is being pretty gracious. He's like, man, we'll use my bow. I've got plenty of arrows. And I'm like, cool, righto. So Thursday morning, we had to boil out the heads a bit more, and because that's a bit of a process. And,
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I can only imagine
with your pig.
The pig, the deer, like, yeah, I've gone through it a bit recently, and I can only imagine how much it would be with a buff. That'd be
look, it's just a 44 cut, sort of 3/4 high on its side on a frame. And you just boil her out, and then once they've been in there for pretty much a good 24 hours, you just hold them by the horn, or the opposite horn, and then you sort of smack it with a piece of firewood, the horn, and then it comes out of the sheath. You would have done that with goats, I would think, or at least seen the sheep.
Yeah.
So that comes out, and then he just saws that off and F's off about 3/4 of that. And then what you do is you just put that sleeve straight over. So the upside to that is getting it home in your airport luggage.
I was going to say much.
So you're just dealing with the central skull with a couple of stubs on it, and then you've got the main horns in you, and that worked a treat, mate. Yeah. But so while they were doing that, I took Dennis's bow and there's ant-mans aplenty out there, so I just ranged them out to 30 and just shot and worked out my gaps. And it's so smooth, eh? Them Black Widow bows.
That's what everyone raves about.
1,800. Right? $1,800 worth of bow. I can't say enough about that thing. And I would love to own one, but my first custom bow is actually going to be an Aussie one. I like to, have an Aussie bow. So Rob Nickel up at Flatline Bows, he's going to make me one. He sent me an email saying, hey, Adam, just to let you know you're up next. And I was like, oh, shit, Rob, I'm about to go on a buffalo hunt. I'm like, can you punt me back? And he goes, oh, yeah, mate, there's plenty of guys on the line. I'm like, all right, make me the starter next year. Yeah, but zero, got my gaps in with that. And, and then it was a chance to go for a scrub ball. So Thursday we did a big mission. We went to a remote spring area, and that the wind was really sketchy. And as soon as we got there, we could see a good scrubber down one end, looking way through, like hundreds of meters down the other side of it. And there was like a little Mickey bull, so an unmarked scrubber as well, but just a young one. And there was a buff all through there. And you probably saw one of my videos I threw up. There was a buff cow standing, waist deep, chest deep in the water, like grazing on some foliage, and her head was fully covered. And like, mate, we were like 15 meters away from her, and I'm like, oh man, like if you don't mind shooting a cow, like if you just want to shoot a buff or whatever,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like mate, you could pump that from you could have snuck up to 5 meters. It's like blank bailing almost.
Yeah, definitely.
And so anyway, we tried to circumnavigate around there, and we also come across this unmarked cow, which Russ sort of estimated to be about 12, 13 years old. And she had these epic horns that just dropped straight down and swung around. But she was like,
yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was wild, like bumper bars. But she was stuck so deep in the mud, she was trapped, mate. And you can't get a vehicle or a winch in there to get her out. So, once we got down around and cut right around the swamp, but there was no pig sign, and the wind was too squirrely and everything squirted out of there. So, Russ said, like, just sit doggo here and I'll go back around and I'll finish her off with the rifle. So that was a majority of that day. And
did she look like she'd been there for a while?
Nah. I reckon like she still had her wits about her and whatnot. And she'd probably only been there from the morning or the night before. Yeah. But that's like even us trying to, like, when we were sort of going around that fringe bit, there was a few boggy spots where I was going down to sort of the knee on occasion and stuff like that. So when you're carrying the bulk of a cow, you got no hope, eh? Yeah. So and then that was sort of Thursday done in short, and then Friday came, the last day, and I'm like, right, let's throw it all to the wind. And so the station owner said to us, he gave us a few different marks. He goes, like, go and try this dam here, and then go and try this windmill. So we cut to I tell a lie. To start with, we went to the dam where I stalked those buff on day one with the bullocky buff and that, and we tried a ambush setup and sat there for like 2 hours, and I like my old knees, crouch in this crouch position. And I'm like, Russ is just in this like depression, just with his cowboy hat on, just chilling. He's just laying back, and I'm sitting there for 2 hours, and I'm practice drawing all the time because just to check for limb clearance. And last day you just want to make sure everything's perfect. And cows were coming through. It was kind of like something out of Africa. Like even the marked cows out there are like super sketchy. Like if they smell your wind, man, they run like deer. Yeah, wow. It's wild, eh? Yeah. It's just big country, mate. They just don't get exposed to humans,
definitely.
Unless they're getting sold or moved.
Right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a bust, and even Buff was still trying to come down through and whatnot, but it just didn't go to plan, and that was for this this big red scrubber that we'd seen on that first day that I took my Buff when we were down there, and then we went righto, let's cut to this dam. So we went to this dam, and there was cattle in there, and there was a big black scrubber hanging off them, and he had this like white piebald face, and I was like, wow. He's a cracker. Like, he just had everything going. He was all singing, all dancing. And we went, righto, well, the cattle had seen us, and we're like, well, the jig's up. So we just went in and sort of sussed around the dam, and then we sort of fainted to leave. And I got Dennis, I said, how about you peel off and we just make an ambush through this gate, because it looks like they'll come through this gate. And he goes, yeah, righto. So he went around the back of this dam and he put up a pig. He actually nearly stepped on a damn pig, and that was another thing the station owner said. He's like, that dam holds pigs, so you might get a crack at them. So unfortunately, he put up a pig there, and he just sort of did the walk around just to sort of like push him a bit, and as like a little bit of a loose drive, for want of a better term. And they all had to file through this thing and through this gate. And anyway, it would have been an 8-yard shot. Where I was set up. Yep. And I was like, all right, here he comes. And I just had this, it was almost textbook, because he was coming on this angle where from my ambush point, I could actually see him approaching, so I could set myself, and as opposed to him just filing through, and I get like 2 yards of warning before I see this black mass come through the gate kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I come to full draw, and just as he's peeling through, his cow just ducks and squirts in behind him. And her neck and that's right behind his vitals, right at the last second. And I was like, oh, and I let down. And Russ just chuckles and he goes, well, that nearly worked. And I was like, didn't it? And he goes, and then he looks at me and he goes, I'm glad you didn't bloody shoot. And I'm like, so am I. So I was like, oh, that was pretty rapid. That got the adrenaline going again. So then we boogied out of there and went to this windmill, but that was bust. It was like the windmill wasn't functional and everything was wet. Everything was dry. And there was cattle sign there, and he's like, man, there must be some water source around here, but let's not spend ages looking for it. And then he goes, all right, so what do you want to do? What last ditch? And I said, well, let's try for that sandy bull that we'd seen, I think it was on Tuesday. And he goes, righto. So we cut all the way back around to there. And, each drive sort of half hour, anywhere between half hour and an hour, because it's so spread out country.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so we booked it around there, and it was like what they call a cattle camp. It's like where cattle like to hang out in the shade and that. And they generally just off a water source and whatnot, where they can chew the cud and all that, because they do a lot of their feeding at night when there's a lot more moisture on the vegetation. It's better for them. So we're coming up to this location, and we like, there he is, and he's just hooking down to the water. I'm like, this is perfect. He's chasing. It's just him. Excuse me, him and one cow booking it down to the water. So we're not dealing with 50, 100 sets of eyes kind of thing that you've got to sort of sneak through. As I said, they're so spooky. And so anyway, we just haul up there. Me and Russ jump out, head into the water, and then we parallel this river country that's quite thick, quite canopy, like a lot of shade and that in there, but a lot of leaves. So it's all sand based, but it's like a lot of crunchy leaves and that. So we're heading up, and we had a pretty good wind, and we're getting right to about where they should have been, and there was some mad bird in this tree, like pretty low, only 4 or 5 meters up, making a raucous effort. And I'm like, oh, and I looked over my left shoulder, just like, as you do, checking your back trail. And there was this white cow. It must have been in heat, and the scrubber up a clacker. And what they must have done is gone across, or she must have booked it through, because the water's only a couple of foot deep. It's clear, it's pristine looking, but it's just sort of wide and shallow. And they must have crossed over and then hooked around and doubled back. And I said, Russ, and he's like, oh, and he just nods and points to the bird. And I'm like, no, Russ. And he goes, oh, shit. Oh, and he goes, damn it. Jeez, they got behind us. And so we just retraced our steps down the waterline and dropped right back, and then sort of just snuck, and then you piffed the boots and snuck out to the edge. And which is like, we ended up on this cattle pad that they'd been on. And what they'd done is they're coming out of the river country, and it goes up a embankment sort of rise. It's, gradual sort of probably 30-degree slope. And then it lips out, and that's the country heading out of there. And they'd stopped at the lip, and like, he's nuzzling her, and he's like trying to ride her, and so they're fully preoccupied. And so boots off, we're sneaking in on this pad, and of course, as you get out of that moisture zone, the vegetation just ceases. There's like little bits of scrub here and there. So I've got an arrow on a course, and we're sneaking in, and I just got more and more exposed to the point where I'm like, man, and of course I'm only moving when I've got 2 sets of eyes, so I'm only moving when both their asses are facing us. And I got to about as far as I felt like I was going to before. It was all in the balance there of like, man, if I push it any further, they're going to sprint, and my opportunity is going to be gone, and they're definitely not going to come towards us. So I just kept inching, and then I'm like, oh, look, what I'll do. He turned side on, which is what I need for a shot, right? And I'm like, and she was facing away, and I'm like, well, I'm just like, from what I'd learnt from the buff, I'm like, I'm just going to have to just take up position, and then just do just at the slow draw, which I'd been practicing with my bow. So just the full slow draw. So it's not some fast, like rip back movement that you would have to do with a 70-pound compound. You can't, you've got to get past that sticking point. I just slowly drew back and got the anchor, and nothing, he didn't balk or anything. And then I just went, oh yeah, this looks good. And Russ is like, oh, what did he say? 36? And I'm like, righto, I better put some Texas windage on this, you know what I mean? Like, this is the last ditch, this is the last afternoon. And I just followed my gut with the gaps, and just let her fly, and it was looking good, and height and everything was perfect. And I hit sort of perfect sort of mid between, the back and the brisket. I hit mid, but it was just a bit far back. So there's a chance that I didn't collect any lung, you know what I mean?
Like liver
and
shot,
he's like,
or further back?
Probably like liver or just past. Yeah. And so hit him, and I got wicked penetration. Like, it was, I was probably only a quarter of my arrow sticking out. So that was all money. And yeah, bloody, he just wheels and Russ is like drop the F-bomb and he's like, because if he gets into the cattle, there's cattle 200 meters away, there's 100 odd cattle. If he gets into them, he's never going to get a shot to finish him.
No, exactly.
And then if they all pee off, into the scrub where we can't follow them in a vehicle, now you've got an angry wounded scrub bull on an active bloody cattle station.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can divulge from that pretty quickly. That's a no-go. So yeah, Russell's just like, man, I'm going to have to shoot him. I'm like, do it. So he just, quickly just got up there on the lip of the bank and just hit him with one and put him down, and then had to give him another. Again, tough animals, mate. So put him down, and I'm like, you know what? I still didn't take anything away from my hunt. I still hunted him.
Yeah.
And all the previous hunts, you know what I mean? Like to lead to that animal. It's not just that animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was pretty stoked, and mate, what a weapon. Same. Gave me my time with him, and gave him some peace and let him go. And yeah, 800 kilos, he reckons. Jesus. Just a colossal. Like my Buffy reckons was about 500, 5 to 6. You know what I mean? This thing was just held another. Oh yeah, man. He was just, his head was just, yeah. Well, you'll see. Well, I don't have his whole head. So, like Russell said, because he's been around the traps, he's like, look, mate, you boil a buff head out. He said the skull looks smaller and the horns look bigger. And so, it does it justice. And he said, but with a scrub bull, the horns just don't look big enough on their big boxy skull.
Yeah.
And he said, in the past, the ones he's taken, he said, you just you get the leather wrap with the shield mount and do it that way. So anyway, we got some awesome pics of him, and then just whipped off all the meat off him. Again, I kept the back straps. So at this point, I've got the back straps off 2 buff and the scrubber. And then we're like, right, that's mad. And we still had enough light. We're like, right, let's go check out this. Let's go for a pig hit out. You know what I mean? Yeah. And on the Thursday, basically on the way home, Russell spotted this pig at about 400 meters out in the scrub. And I don't know if you saw my video I threw up of that, but him and Dennis booked out to try and intercept that. And Dennis actually got a shot at it, but Dennis wears bifocals, and even he left them in his pack, but he only uses them to sort of reference where the animal is and where its position is, just kind of like binos, and then puts them down and shoots without them. Otherwise, the string touches it. But anyway, he was using his rangefinder for that purpose. And so he got a shot at that pig on Thursday Arvo. So that was the first pig we'd seen all week, other than the one Dennis tried to step on. Anyway, we headed out to this. This was the last roll of the dice sort of thing, and we headed out to where this Dennis's Tuesday buff was. And so we parked the car and we booked it down because it's like the light's descending, and it goes. You don't get much twilight out there. It's like it's light and then it ain't light. And so we got down the track, just bloody arsey that the wind was good. And we just stealthed up, and Russ was on point, and 2 wicked big wedgies took off. I was like, oh well, something's into him. And then he's like, pigs. He's like, holds up like 5, and I'm like, holy shit, sick, So we just sit on our ass and whip our boots off, and mate, we only had to walk in off the track. So the track was paralleling the river, and there's probably 80 meters between that track and the river, and half of that's scrub country where this carcass was right on the lip of, and then the rest of it's river sand and then the river. And so we only had to go in about 7 to 10 meters, and one of them might have been a sow, like in heat, or at least resisting advances. So she sort of moseyed off to the right, back in the direction we'd come down. And so we ended up with these 4 pigs, and the bigger bull had his head deep inside the carcass, like chewing away. And then so Dennis and I just like got next to each. I sort of swung out to the side as stealth as I could. But there's a bloody weed up there. It comes from South America, I'm pretty sure. It's called Hyptus, and like I said, it's the dry season, so everything's got no leaves on it, but all the stems are still there. So there's all these woody weed stems. You've got to sort of thread an arrow through. So he and I ended up firing 3 arrows apiece at these 4 pigs. And again, this is why we bow hunt, because it's just quiet and they don't have any idea. And pigs are used to noise and racket. Like, this ain't deer, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And for me, bro, this was such a buzz because, as I told you in the past, my pig adventures have been I've been on many, many pig hunts, but had seen very, very little action.
Yeah.
And except for that, like, the best time I've had was with you down south that time.
That was great.
Yeah, that was rapid.
Barraba.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So anyway, like my last shot on this boar, he was like right at the back edge of the scrub and the dirt where it turned to sand for the river, and I picked the perfect, like my arc will go over that shit and then it'll just drop in, and it was all looking good, but it hit a little twig and it just upped it, and then it bounced off his back, and then it went another 25 yards down into the river sand, and he just sort of went, what was that, kind of thing. And it didn't super spook him, but he's like, all right, let's, and then they all sort of just moseyed. Then the sixth sense sort of kicked in and they all just moseyed off, but at least they all booked it right, which is the direction we'd come. And then we started collecting arrows and just sort of talking in sort of, not loudly, sort of hushed tone still, because you're still hunting. And then Russ was like, oh, there's another pig. And so this other pig, and these are all around sort of my body weight, sort of 70 odd kilo. Mm-hmm. And there he comes down and he stops like a bloody bear and starts scratching his back on this tree. And I'm like, oh, sick, this is going to be good. And Dennis punched out tried to do a flanker around him and punched out to the river and down and around. And I thought, screw it, I'm just going to, like, I don't want to ruin his stalk and make a racket. So I just sort of stealthed in to an oblique off the carcass where I thought the wind would be favourable from what it had been doing, and hoped he'd feed in, and that's exactly what he did. He just moseyed his way in, and so he came towards me as Dennis was trying to come around on him. And yeah, I just had the carcass in view, and I had like a clear shooting lane, and yeah, he came I didn't even range him, mate. I just went, oh, that's like 18 odd yards, and just drew back. I had a couple of false draws as he sort of started and sort of spun, because as you know, pigs don't stop moving. And once he just got to that perfect angle, I was still quartering on, but it was ever so slight, like 1/8 sort of quartering on, and I just threaded it behind the shoulder and got past that fighting shield. Yeah, I didn't get a pass through, like the arrow didn't poke through, but it mustn't have been far short of it.
Yeah, okay.
And that was my different bow. So I took my backup. I took my regular bow, which is a same riser, stabilized wood ILF riser, but I got the 50-pound Uka limbs on it. Mm-hmm. So they feel like a 45, but shoot like a 55.
Yeah, gotcha.
Because they're so light, and one, they're light and they got that super curve on them. Mm-hmm. And I'm shooting out of that. I'm shooting gold tip trade classics at 400 spine, and they have like I think it's a 74 grain insert, steel insert, and then I had the 175 old school Cayuga old school single bevels up the front. And mate, I hit him and he spun, went about 6 meters, did a couple of quick like spin arounds, and then just rolled over and thrashed around and kicked around and was done.
What a good feeling.
And I was like, oh, mate, it was rapid. I was like, that's so good. And Russ is like, bloody good shot. And I'm like, yeah, I can say that. You can say that again. He's going nowhere, eh? And actually, and when he did the spin around and fell, like, it wasn't 100% sure what was going to happen, Russ was like, hit him again. And I looked at him like, I would, but this is a bloody judo. So I had a judo. And you remember that, what happened with us that time? When I had the damn judo, I'll need to piss them off out of the quiver. It's great fun when someone else is hunting and you can practice. But,
yeah, exactly.
I need to leave it in the car and make sure I got the pointy ones on.
Big game hunt like that.
I know. Rookie error.
That's hilarious.
But so he had a little bit of ivory, and that's my first proper boar. So
that's awesome. That's
super
also
stoked.
A really nice way to finish the whole week, right?
Oh, 100%, man. Yep.
Dude, what a freaking adventure. A long time in the making, and it was all worth the wait, hey?
Yeah. Yep, definitely exceeded expectations, that's for sure. And Russell had another crew of bow hunters go up there the week after us, and they had a cracking time. They got 5 buffs and they got something like 14 pigs. And I was like, what, 14 pigs? And Dennis was like, yeah, they would have just been all feeding off our carcasses, I presume.
Yeah, probably.
And I thought, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
for sure.
Just would have worked them. Yeah.
Yeah, it works well. That's pretty much what they've always done at the block up at Springshaw. They'll just drop a cow and leave the carcass somewhere, like take all the meat and then just leave whatever's left over around. Or if there's been something going through, for instance, I don't know, a sick cow or something that needs to be killed, they'll just pull it somewhere and the pigs always find it, always find them. They just that smell, it just travels for miles, right?
Yeah, bro, but you wouldn't be putting them on your plate.
Oh, no. Yeah, a bit different.
Those ones out there, man. Yeah. Oh, the rancid smell, and I'm. Like, I can handle sights, but smells do get me.
Yeah.
Like, in a good way, too. Like, I have many fond memories come flooding back from smells and whatnot. But, yeah, that was pretty rank. In the way. And I've got this visual of that big boar that had his head in there when we first, like, fronted up. And he's just when he turned around and I got to sort of see him front on and he's just, like, chewing on something. I'm like, oh, what is that mank? He's just chewing, thinking that that's like a ribeye to me, you know,
exactly, like royal. Mate, it actually reminds me of it was one Easter when we went out there when I was quite young. I must have been maybe grade 2, grade 3, maybe even grade 4. We were out at this property, this massive pig, huge, like it would have been. I reckon it must have been good 130, maybe 140 kilo pig. Like she was huge, just a big sow. And he, like my uncle, I think he pumped like 6 rounds through it before it actually finally dropped. And we went up
with the 222 Bart.
No, I don't know what it would. No, it would have been something bigger. It might have. This is up at Springshaw, so this might be.
But you said you're a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, mate, 222 was king back when we were kids. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. And he owns one, doesn't he?
No, I don't think they do up there. I think they've got like the.
Okay.
You're thinking of Gimpy. Yeah, I think it might have been 30.
Oh, Roger.
308 maybe or something bigger. Like, yeah, I'm not definite. Anyway, punched a fair few rounds through it. He's a good shot too. Yeah, I remember going up to it, just be like, "Wow, this thing's freaking ridiculous." We got up to it, and just the
this
smell
could
of
eat
it,
me.
dude.
Razorback.
Yeah, exactly. Its smell was just putrid. Like it was so bad. And my auntie said something about dinner. I said, "Are we having pork for dinner?" She's like, "Oh no, like we don't touch these ones." But yeah, that smell has just stuck with me. You know what's actually pretty bizarre is in primary school. We had this chick in our class, Annie. She was from China, and her parents used to always get her the smelly rubbers. And she brought this one rubber in, and it smelled like that fucking pig. It was so gross, and I was like scarred from it. I was like, "What the heck is that?" Like, you can't have that as a good smelling rubber. That's just
damn
huge.
it! I lost you.
Oh, you got me back.
Yeah, I got you back now.
Yeah, dude. Oh, so gross.
Again, there you go. Smells bringing, that olfactory memory jog.
Yeah, exactly right. The old trick of senses. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, been a good yarn, I'd say. It's a good first.
Yeah, we've jawed on for a bit long, haven't we?
We've done well. It's close to 2 hours. No, it's been good. But you know me, I do like an early morning start, and I've got one tomorrow.
You do. Oh, Roger. Yeah, so do I.
I'm going to say let's wrap it. But what is your Instagram? What can people hit you up on and have a look at some of this footage and some of the pictures?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'll be honest, I'm not a social media buff so much, but I did only get social media, or particularly Facebook's for all family stuff, but Instagram was sort of hunting orientated content, because someone took ages to talk me into it, and I'm like, oh yeah, cool. So I could just see all hunting stuff and no other crap. And they're like, yeah, and I'm like, oh, okay, sold. So it's Adam J Barter, just that
Adam
title.
Barter.
Maybe
full stops in there. Yeah, I just checked it out.
Yeah, Rog.
That's how social media savvy you are.
yeah, that's it, killing it. Yeah, so if you just want to share hunting related stuff, then have at it.
It's the place to be. No, that's awesome, dude. Well, thank you very much for making the time. I appreciate it, and it's cool to actually hear the full story. I'd kind of gotten little pockets of it over the last few weeks, so it's nice to hear the whole thing unravel. It's really cool. I'm glad you had such an awesome trip.
Nah, cheers, bro, and thanks for letting me share it. And hopefully, some people, what's the golden saying? Just don't wait. If you want to do a trip, just do it. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Literally.
Exactly.
So don't wait for these things. I had to bloody wait 3, but not by my own fault. But get after it. Set your goals and just get out there and have a crack.
That's it. Fling some arrows. Have some fun.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Well, we'll have to make a date to run your mincer with these back straps, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'm keen. Very keen.
Wicked. All right.
Thanks,
Cheers,
dude.
bro. You have a good evening.
You too.
That wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, team. If you did have any topics, questions, or you wanted to suggest a guest for Becoming a Bowhunter, you can send me an email at matty@becomingabowhunter.com. If you are enjoying the show or you've enjoyed in particular episodes, please do me a solid and share it around with your friends. If you are not already, please hit the subscribe button, as the more subscribers we get, the higher the podcast gets ranked, and that definitely helps out for showing it to other individuals. If you are not already following me on Instagram, it's at becomingabowhunter.podcast, and on YouTube, it's Becoming a Bowhunter. Get out, team, fling some arrows, get that practice in, and walk those yards in the paddocks until you find those critters. That is it for now, but not the last time that you'll hear from Becoming a Bowhunter.